The company, who is that? What is that?
Well, you could contact the Ministry of Labor as of June 15th and let them know that harassment is occurring in the workplace, and then they would send out inspectors and do an investigation. So this is why the new law that is coming into effect June 15th will help to hold not only the bully accountable, but the employer accountable.
Isn't that a little dangerous, though? I mean, you're going to get disgruntled employees who may abuse it.
Well, you have to file a complaint in good faith, and this is where the investigation comes in. So once you do the investigation, if it's a disgruntled employee, then obviously you could follow the disciplinary procedure. But there are quite a few people, if they're at that point where they're willing to speak out about their bullying, it's probably more likely than not happening, and they're at their wits' end and they want to do something. And so that's why it's so important for employers to understand that this bill, and I've heard this from employers, that, oh, it's just government intervening with our business. But it's similar to other laws where when you have individuals who are not being respectful in the workplace, who are not treating individuals as they should, then sometimes the government has to step in and say this type of behavior is...
Well, that's true, but the reason that New Jersey Association for Justice thanks Assemblywoman Greenstein for raising this issue is because it's not so easy to leave your job, even in a good economy, and especially not in a bad one. It has effects for your family. It disrupts insurance. It puts the family at risk. It's not easy to say to somebody, look, put up with the vomiting, put up with the psychiatric distress, put up with the illness, the medication, the disability, until you can't stand it anymore, break down, and then if you lose your job, you lose your job. The taxpayers will support you. I favor the idea that the bad actor should be solely responsible for what he or she has done. It's only common sense.
With a minute left.
Do you know Sheriff Joe Arpaio?
No, never met the man.
If I'm an elected sheriff, do I have the authority to investigate someone because they criticized me?
If that's the only basis of your investigation, no.
Iglesias has no connection to the current FBI investigation, but he looked through our research and did some investigating of his own. His conclusion was sobering.
If you were handling this case, knowing what you know about it, would you seek an indictment?
I would go to a grand jury. I'd work very closely with the Civil Rights Criminal Division in Washington, D.C., and based on the information that I have, I would seek an indictment, yes.
Well, let's say he is interviewed by the FBI or these charges come against him, and he says, I had a reason to investigate this person. I had a reason to investigate that person. Is that a defense?
It's a defense, but the question to ask, is it a winning defense? And I think the answer to that is no.
We do not know if the FBI investigation will result in criminal charges. Legal experts tell CBS 5 the investigators are likely trying to turn a trusted deputy against the sheriff. But even if they can't, the pattern of cases may be enough to haul the sheriff off to court.
Every single one of those individuals has in common their opposition at some point in time to Joe Arpaio on a legitimate political issue.
I believe that he did everything in his power to try to weaken our ability to report the news.
Has the FBI interviewed you about this issue?
Yes. This is remarkable. I can't believe this is happening in the United States. This is something that I have seen in South America, Africa, Eastern Europe, and Asia. Absolutely unacceptable. We don't do this kind of thing in this.
Handed down a verdict for a hate crime that has been grabbing national attention. It involves an interracial couple. I'm sure you remember the story. They discovered a cross burning on their property in the dead of night back in February. Jack Julian is covering the story. He joins me from Halifax. Let's start, with the breaking news. What's the verdict there?
The verdict is guilty. 20-year-old Justin Rayberg has been found guilty of inciting hatred for that cross burning. Just to go back over the facts of the case, just imagine what this family went through. It's a rural road in this community called Poplar Grove. In the middle of the night in last February, the whole family was asleep. The mother, Michelle Lyon, is white. The father, Shane Howe, is black. They have 5 kids, ages 2 to 17. They heard a disturbance outside their house. They looked out the window and they saw a 2-meter cross on fire with a noose hanging from it. There was a lot of noise outside. One of the children reported hearing a racial epithet yelled, and this caused a huge outrage both in Nova Scotia, across Canada. It received international attention. Now, the facts of the case are not disputed because Justin Rayberg did plead guilty to criminal harassment, and he laid out everything that happened in an agreed statement of facts. The argument was whether or not this was a racial act and whether or not this was qualified as inciting racial hatred. He argued that it wasn't through his lawyer, but the judge has disagreed, and the guilty verdict has come down.
Jewish literature. He had been charged with 2 counts of knowingly publishing false information leading to social or racial intolerance. But after 8 hours of deliberation, the jury brought in only 1 guilty verdict.
At 3:09 this afternoon, the jury filed back into the courtroom. Since yesterday afternoon, they had deliberated for about 8 hours. The verdict, not guilty in the pamphlet, The West War on Islam. Guilty on Did 6 Million Really Die? Zundel talked with reporters. He said he was not surprised. He would be back to carry on his struggle against what he says is the monstrous lie that is the Holocaust. When the judge returned, the Crown asked for a substantial period behind bars to deter Mr. Zundel and others. The judge deferred sentence until the end of March.
I think that Mr. Zundel, as a first offender, is probably not somebody who would get the maximum. But I think that it should be substantial to send a message to members of this community who send out this kind of material that it won't be tolerated.